The Roman Empire undoubtedly stood as a colossus over a world where generals shaped the destinies of entire nations, and the Senate ratified laws binding millions of subjects. Yet, the true power, capable of elevating an heir to the throne or casting them down, often lay not on the battlefield or in the resounding speeches of orators, but within the shadowy corridors of the imperial palace. It was there, in the very heart of the Palatine, that a young man, barely 19, served wine at clandestine meetings whose proceedings would never enter official chronicles. He was no mere slave, but Marcus Claudius Marcellus, nephew of Augustus himself and his presumed successor. Having received an excellent education befitting a ruler, married to the emperor's daughter, and surrounded by universal esteem, Marcellus was presented to Rome as the hope for the future. In reality, however, he was being made a pawn in a treacherous political game so dark that its repercussions would be forever etched into the annals of the empire. The inevitable question arises: how did a man destined to become Rome's second emperor find himself ensnared in a web of intrigue, manipulation, and humiliation? The truth, which is yet to be uncovered, will not be found in conventional history textbooks, for it was carefully hidden from future generations. And it must be acknowledged that this story has the power to fundamentally alter our understanding of the mechanisms of power in the ancient world. In ancient times, the most meticulously guarded secrets became formidable weapons in the hands of the Roman Empire. To delve into the dark history of Marcus Claudius Marcellus, one must first turn to the origins of these events. In 30 BC, the Roman Republic had just emerged from a decade of devastating civil wars that had depleted its resources and strength. Gaius Octavian, better known as Augustus, was confidently asserting himself as the most powerful man in the known world. Following his triumph over Mark Antony and Cleopatra, Rome stood on the cusp of a new era, transforming into an empire. Yet, despite the victories won on the battlefields, the real struggle for power was only just beginning. Maintaining control in an environment where betrayal could lurk behind every lavish feast, within any political alliance, and even within one's own family, presented a formidable challenge. It was at this juncture that a key figure emerged on the political stage: Livia Drusilla, Augustus's wife. Livia appeared as a shrewd and calculating woman whose ambitions not only matched, but at times surpassed those of her husband. Formally, her role was to perform the duties of an imperial consort. In reality, however, she was an experienced political strategist, keenly aware that true control over Rome was secured not merely by the might of legions or persuasive speeches in the Senate, but by the mastery of secrets. Livia, adept at intrigue, grasped an undeniable truth. Generals could be defeated in battle, senators bought or eliminated, but a person ensnared by their own vices would forever remain a prisoner of their passions. In this ruthless game for power, she saw in Marcellus, the young heir, an excellent puppet for weaving a web of manipulation. While Augustus harbored hopes of cultivating a virtuous ruler from his nephew, Livia discovered a more potent method to open his eyes to the fact that power was not an inherited gift, but the domain of those who skillfully orchestrated the shadows. Marcus Claudius Marcellus was barely 12 when he first crossed the threshold of the imperial palace. In the eyes of the people, he was the embodiment of hope, the young successor destined to inherit Augustus's throne. Yet, behind the palace's impenetrable walls, his upbringing took an unexpected turn, one no one could have imagined. By day, he mastered subjects befitting an aristocrat: rhetoric, philosophy, military arts. He was prepared for brilliant performances in the forums, for commanding legions, and for embodying Roman virtue. But with the onset of night, the heir found himself in an entirely different reality, where his role fundamentally shifted. There, he gained knowledge not from books, but by observing eloquent glances, meaningful silences, and forbidden pleasures. Driven by her pragmatic worldview, Livia Drusilla tirelessly impressed upon her husband that effective governance of the empire required a profound understanding of human weaknesses. And the best way to penetrate the essence of these vulnerabilities was to observe people in their most candid moments, when they were unwilling to share their thoughts with the wider public. Thus, private dinner parties were established. High-ranking senators and military commanders, believing they would participate in discussions of important state matters, instead found themselves in the company of young Marcellus, who, clad in provocative attire, poured wine. Unbeknownst to them, the guests became subjects of close observation and scrutiny, falling into an intricately woven web of obligations from which there was no escape. For Marcellus, what initially seemed a peculiar political intrigue soon became commonplace. With astonishing rapidity, he realized that his body was not merely personal property, but a potent instrument of influence, no less valuable than the empire's gold or the might of its legions. Thus, while the populace saw him as an exemplary prince, in secret, Marcellus was being transformed into a pivotal figure in a meticulously planned manipulation operation, one that would soon radically alter Rome's political landscape. As time progressed, what began as private dinners evolved into a flawlessly orchestrated mechanism. Livia Drusilla, like a skilled puppeteer, forged an intricate system of blackmail, surpassing any army in its effectiveness. She transformed behind-the-scenes intrigues into a powerful weapon capable of influencing the empire's destiny. Crucial meetings were not confined to the opulent halls of the imperial palace. Secret villas, tucked away in secluded corners of Rome, served as venues for meticulously prepared events. Each room was equipped with the latest in espionage technology. Hidden compartments, concealed cameras, and strategically placed mirrors captured the minutest details of the goings-on. Nothing escaped Livia's watchful eye, who attended the meeting. What desires and requests were voiced, what intimate secrets were unveiled. All this compromising information was meticulously recorded and carefully stored in secure chests under her unceasing control. Thus, esteemed senators, who by day proclaimed themselves unwavering defenders of morality within the Senate's walls, by night found themselves at the mercy of their human weaknesses, and each such moment became Livia's possession. From then on, no vote, no appointment to office, no crucial state decision was made without her clandestine influence. Astonishingly, for most of Roman society, this hidden power remained invisible. Officially, Augustus was believed to control the empire with an iron fist, relying on the might of his legions and his personal political charisma. In truth, however, many of his decisions were dictated by the web of secrets and intrigues his wife skillfully wove in the shadows. At the center of this web was Marcellus, the heir to the throne, whose fate was inextricably linked to this perilous game. Marcus Claudius Marcellus, a scion of a noble family, proved to be not merely a puppet in the hands of the all-powerful Livia, but a pivotal figure in a complex political game that held the empire's most influential individuals in thrall. Each of his appearances at secret gatherings became decisive not only for his personal destiny, but for the future of Rome itself. From a young age, Marcellus was a hostage to intrigues into which he was unwillingly drawn. By the age of 17, however, a transformation occurred within him. After years spent as a pawn in Livia's web, he realized he possessed a hidden power that even his patroness had not foreseen. Every glance, every secret, every whispered word at these closed sessions was forever etched into his memory. He knew which senators were most vulnerable, what ambitious schemes generals harbored, and which families were tainted by scandal. Instead of remaining an instrument of blackmail in others' hands, he began to use this knowledge to achieve his own ends. His first move was quiet and inconspicuous. With a composure unusual for his age, he confronted one of the senators who had once humiliated him the most. He did not resort to weapons or open threats, but employed what Rome feared most, the exposure of carefully guarded secrets. The unveiling of meticulously guarded secrets yielded immediate results: immense wealth, influential political backing, and an all-consuming silence became his reward. Marcellus realized he could transform from a defenseless victim into a dangerous predator with just one decisive step. His marriage to Julia the Elder, daughter of Augustus himself, marked a turning point in his destiny. All Rome rejoiced, celebrating this union as a symbol of imperial succession. But behind the lavish facade of the festivities, this wedding transformed into an alliance of sharp intellect and boundless power. The young and brilliant Julia quickly grasped the full extent of her husband's knowledge. Together, they formed a formidable pair, skillfully combining the legitimacy of the imperial dynasty with an extensive network of blackmail capable of subjugating the entire Roman Senate. Marcellus was no longer merely a youth manipulated by the cunning Livia. He had become a shrewd strategist, a key player who had learned to transform his own pain into the most lethal weapon in Roman politics. Rome was yet unaware of the impending changes. With Marcellus alongside Julia, and Livia still deftly holding the reins of power in the shadows, Rome witnessed the birth of an alliance that was never openly proclaimed, but controlled the empire with astonishing efficiency. On Rome's political stage, a complex game unfolded where at first glance everything appeared to be a model of stability and efficiency. The public beheld a promising young heir of irresistible charisma, and his wife, the emperor's own daughter, preparing to assume the role of future empress. However, behind this meticulously crafted facade lay an intricate triangle of power, where each participant held their own levers of influence and hidden motives. Livia, like an experienced strategist, skillfully exploited the archives of compromising information she had amassed over the years. Marcellus, in turn, deftly manipulated the secrets he had memorized from his youth, treating them as valuable capital. Julia, thanks to her privileged position at the very heart of the imperial court, continuously replenished this network with fresh and strategically vital intelligence. Villas, secretly situated in the environs of Rome, transformed into genuine decision-making centers where intrigues were woven and destinies forged. Here, philosophical discussions were not held, nor were the intricacies of laws debated. Instead, secret deals were struck, betrayals enacted, and human weaknesses skillfully exploited. High-ranking generals, influential senators, and wealthy merchants were invited under the false pretext of participating in imperial decisions, only to ultimately find themselves ensnared in cunningly laid traps from which escape was virtually impossible. What was remarkable was that this machinery of power was not limited exclusively to men. Julia, possessing a sharp mind and intuition, quickly realized that the wives of high-ranking officials were an inexhaustible source of valuable secrets. She organized lavish women's banquets where, in a relaxed atmosphere, intimate conversations revealed what men would never dare to make public. Thus, step by step, a complex web of power, founded on secrets, intrigues, and manipulations, was woven, hidden from the eyes of the common people. As a result, this circle of control steadily expanded, encompassing not only political leaders, but also their closest relatives, creating an atmosphere of widespread suspicion and fear. The Roman Empire appeared to bask in the glow of stability and unprecedented prosperity. However, the true fate of the state was decided in an environment of utmost secrecy, amidst opulent attire and lavish feasts, where betrayal and intrigue undermined the foundations of trust and morality. The influential triumvirate of Livia, Marcellus, and Julia had no need for military might or legions. Their primary weapon was carefully collected and skillfully wielded secrets through which they subjugated the Roman elite. However, any shadow empire, no matter how powerful, eventually faces resistance. The extensive blackmail network established by Livia, Marcellus, and Julia began to show cracks. Too many senators had been humiliated, too many generals brought under control, and too many families lived under the constant threat of exposure. Resentment festered in silence, gradually escalating into open conspiracy. The first to rebel against the system were not influential aristocrats, but those on the fringes of Roman society. Even Rome's ordinary brothels felt the competition from the aristocratic prostitution organized under the palace's patronage. The secret knowledge held by courtesans, banished from the palace, began to reveal its secrets. Like Marcellus, they understood the vulnerabilities of influential men. Scattered fragments of information gradually coalesced into a comprehensive picture. Senators whose pride had been wounded allied with prostitutes and slaves, eager to share their knowledge. They meticulously gathered evidence, sought witnesses, and examined documents. Their aim was to use Marcellus's own weapon against him, blackmail, but they underestimated their adversary. Marcellus was no longer the naive youth Livia had groomed. He had transformed into a cold-blooded strategist, adept at using information for both defense and attack. Upon discovering the conspiracy, he did not resort to public trials or executions. His vengeance was carefully planned and distinguished by its particular cruelty. One by one, key participants in the conspiracy began to die under mysterious circumstances that appeared to be accidents. One senator was found dead in a brothel, a victim of his own vices. Another vanished without a trace after agreeing to a meeting, ostensibly for reconciliation. Marcellus celebrated his triumph watching as flames consumed the secret archives, potential weapons that could have been used against him. This incident served as a harsh lesson. Blackmail was a powerful tool, but sometimes a more radical approach was required. Eliminating enemies turned into a cautionary example was what truly instilled fear and respect. Following the assassination attempt on his life, Marcellus's network not only endured, but grew even more extensive and powerful. Rome realized that an open confrontation with the heir apparent was an extremely risky undertaking. Marcellus was prepared to retaliate with the very poison he had been fed since childhood, demonstrating ruthlessness and unyielding resolve. It seemed nothing could break his power. He skillfully evaded conspiracies, methodically eliminated rivals, and forged an extensive network of secrets that permeated every corner of the Senate. His influence was pervasive and, seemingly, unshakable. Yet even the most dangerous predator can fall victim to their own weapon. In 23 BC, Marcellus suddenly fell ill. It began with dizziness and fever, followed by excruciating pain and delirium. Official historians subsequently attributed his demise to a mysterious illness or arsenic poisoning, but the truth was far more insidious. Marcellus did not fall by sword or poison, but by the very instrument he had so skillfully used to attain power: sex. Marcellus viewed power as an extension of sexual desire, a tool for achieving political ends. But fate played a cruel trick on him. An enemy, long lurking in the shadows, devised an ingenious plan for revenge, one designed to deliver a devastating blow to the young politician's pride and ambitions. During an intimate encounter, Marcellus was deliberately infected with a deadly venereal disease, which in those times meant an inevitable and agonizing demise. The cruel irony was that the man who had transformed intimate relationships into a weapon of political struggle himself fell victim to the very same strategy. His final weeks became an unending agony, a mirrored reflection of his own past, the pain, humiliation, and moral decay he had so readily inflicted upon others now descended upon him. Livia Drusilla, the woman at the root of his dark upbringing and political career, watched his demise with undisguised coolness, like a strategist confident in her victory. The heir she had once molded was no longer of value. With Marcellus's death, all the secret archives fell into her hands, allowing her to consolidate the power that was destined to pass to her son, Tiberius. Marcellus was a prince destined to rule Rome, but his tragic end served as a stark confirmation that in the corridors of the Palatine there are no indispensable figures. The game of power ruthlessly devours its participants, even the most seemingly valuable and promising. Even the most prominent individuals are susceptible to vulnerability. Marcellus's demise did not lead to the disappearance of the system he had created. On the contrary, it served as a starting point for a practice that profoundly influenced subsequent Roman emperors. The meticulously compiled archives, containing documents, lists of names, and evidence, outlived their creator. Livia Drusilla demonstrated foresight, ensuring the preservation of these materials and passing them on to her son Tiberius, who inherited not only the imperial throne, but also a complex system of blackmail unparalleled in antiquity. From that moment, aristocratic prostitution became an integral element of imperial power. Young scions of noble families were trained to become intimate spies. Lavish festivities transformed into arenas of manipulation, where secrets gleaned in intimate settings gained a weight that surpassed the might of legions. For centuries, this model of control was passed down in an atmosphere of the strictest secrecy. Legends speak of the existence of secret instructions, known as the Palatine Protocols, which detailed methods for using sex, blackmail, and extortion as tools for governing the state. In the shadow of the Roman Empire's grandeur lay mechanisms that determined the fates of millions, yet were hidden from the eyes of the common people. Many political decisions that shaped citizens' daily lives were made not in the majestic Senate or on the battlefields, but in secluded rooms where matters not subject to public disclosure were concluded. Marcellus's tragic fate lifted the veil on an unpalatable truth. Absolute power relies not only on valor and military triumphs, but also on the skillful manipulation of humanity's most intimate weaknesses. This sinister legacy outlived the short life of an heir who was never destined to ascend to the pinnacle of power. The story of Marcus Claudius Marcellus testifies that empires are built not only by sword and word. At times, their foundation consists of secrets, humiliations, and shadows meticulously concealed from official chronicles. The young man who was destined to become Rome's second emperor became both a victim and an instrument of political intrigue. His body was transformed into a tool of manipulation, his pain into a system of control, and his legacy was immortalized not in triumphal arches, but in the clandestine methods that subtly shaped the empire for centuries. It inevitably begs the question, how many other empires, both ancient and modern, are founded upon equally dark foundations? Roman history was etched not only in marble and blood, but also by secrets it would have preferred to keep forever buried in the depths of time.